Welcome back to the Red Path. In today's Chill Game Learn, we're going to discuss how to embrace the suck. So, what do I mean by embrace the suck? Well, as best I can tell, it's a phrase that's kind of coined by the American military to more or less mean deal with it. I'm not going to use it exactly like that because there's a lot of things that I think you shouldn't have to just deal with, but it's kind of fit into what the theme of this episode is going to be about. So here's what I kind of mean. It's okay to not be okay at something. And in regards to the hobby, we're talking about specifically the hobby itself, the painting, the kit bashing, the modelling, however you apply that, the creative side, right? It's also okay to not be okay at playing the game. You know, if you lose more games than you win, if you don't really grasp the tactics or whatever, that's also fine. And it's also okay to not be okay at the lore. And that's more about kind of understanding the scope of it, or maybe not enjoying the scope of it, the background, the fluff, the reasons why the narrative works in the way it does. These are things it's okay to not be okay with, right? They're things that you might not particularly enjoy one aspect or two or three aspects of, you may not be particularly talented at, and it's completely fine, and we're going to discuss why. So the first part I want to look at, and this one is really the one that most applies to myself, is the hobby itself, the painting, the creative aspect of it, and why it's important to be alright with not being good at it. So I mean, anyone who's sort of followed the channel or talked to me over an extended period of time, I'm not the best painter. I'm okay tabletop standard wise. It looks okay from 2 or 3 feet away, but I don't get a huge amount of enjoyment out of it, or I do, but I stress about having to do it, right? And that's something, in a game like this, in a hobby like this, it's integral. I'm a complete believer and proponent of having a painted army. I think that enhances the experience for yourself and for your opponent, for people watching the game. It just makes it more engaging, more fun, right? So I think having a painted army is important. But if you can't, if you just really can't do it yourself, or you don't have someone who could paint it for you or anything like that, that's no big deal. But I think some key aspects of why it's okay to not be good at the hobby side. Don't paint to be a golden demon winner. There may be some of you, probably quite a few of you, that are very talented painters. Maybe you do commission work, or you paint for your local gaming store, or you love painting, and maybe you could be a top level painter, and that's great, absolutely awesome, and I'm very jealous. But for those of us who are maybe in the same boat as me, where it's not your thing, it's not your primary love, right, with the hobby, don't worry about it. Like, seriously, if your models, if your army isn't the most attractive on the table, if it's not the best looking, that's fine. If you've put paint on them, first of all, that's what you should do, right? That's not really the right word there. I don't want to say bare minimum, because again, there are reasons why some people may not be painting their armies. There's legit reasons, but don't fret just because yours isn't the best. You shouldn't compare your creations, your art, your creativity to someone else's. We're all strong and weak at different aspects, and some people are great painters, some of us aren't. That's fine, but do it for yourself. If you are going to engage in some painting, some hobby work, some kit bashing, building terrain, whatever, do it for yourself, for your own peace, for your own me time, for, you know, getting away from the real world. It's something I need to try and do a bit more of, because like I said, even though I don't enjoy this particular aspect of the hobby as much, and I think it's more of I dread it and I talk myself out of it. Because, you know, I'll be honest, when I do eventually sit down with a paintbrush, I can paint for a couple of hours and it's fine. And I've got some models I'm pretty proud of. They'll never win a competition, they'll never win an award, and that's fine. That's not what I'm in this for. But I think coming to terms with that for yourself and using the hobby, the painting aspect, as a time to get something for yourself, some peace, some meditation, that Zen moment, whatever it is, something where you're just, you know, you've got your podcast on or your music on or whatever, and you have some personal time, right? But also track your progress, okay? Like, you know, we often take photos of our minis, whether it's, you know, because we're, you know, documenting a battle, or, you know, we're proud of something or whatever. But track your progress, right? I'm not saying like take meticulous notes. I mean, obviously that's something you'll probably want to do as a better painter, as a professional painter or a commission painter, because, you know, you have to get your recipes consistent and right. But every couple of weeks, if you paint, you know, a few hours a week, or, you know, a couple times a week, take a picture of a model and just keep it. Tracking your progress in anything is useful. With, you know, it's something I strongly recommend. I recommend it, you know, personally, for players who want to be more competitive and better at the game, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. But take pictures of your model, or compare older, you know, photos from 2 or 3 years ago or 2 or 3 months ago with what you've recently worked, and look at your progress, not measured against someone else, not measured against the Golden Demon winner or your favorite YouTube, you know, artists or battle report channel, who obviously have really gorgeous armies a lot of the time. Just measure against yourself and you'll see improvement, because anything you do, the more you do it, the better you'll become. And of course, you know, that curve, that arc of progression isn't always going to be always up. You'll have dips, and, you know, maybe some stuff goes on in real life, and, you know, you have to take a break and you kind of plateau for a while. That's fine. But over a long period of time, enough practice and enough effort, you will see improvement. Even I admit improvement in my own work, and, you know, again, it's not great, but it does the job. And beyond that as well, find something within the hobby that you do enjoy. There'll probably be something. I'm a more kind of physical, tactile, hands-on. Like the fine detail of painting is kind of what throws me off, because my hand-eye coordination just isn't great. I don't know if that's to do with age. Maybe I need to get my vision checked, which I probably do. You know, I get up close to the model and, like, I can't edge highlight very good, and I'll, you know, my silvers and golds will go onto the armor when I'm doing the trim of my berserkers or something, and that's frustrating. And I just can't get it. Now, I could do things to improve that. I could get, you know, a magnifying mask thing and better lighting in here and stuff like that. But what I do enjoy is making terrain, like custom terrain, or, you know, like homemade terrain, trash terrain, however you want to call it. When I first got into the hobby, one of the first channels I really got started enjoying was Luke. It was Luke's APS now. It's Geek Gaming now. Because he had really great tips on affordable stuff you could do to make your own terrain. And I had a small army, but terrain is another set of investment, right? You know, you've got your 1,000 point, 2,000 point army, but even when you get it painted and you put it on the table, if you're just playing with, you know, like kitchen rolls and books stacked up, it takes that immersion away. And that's kind of one of the biggest selling points of playing, right? Is that immersion, that letting yourself go in and see through the eyes of your orc boy or your berserker or your inquisitor, and imagining how they're dealing with this situation. So terrain is, again, very cost prohibitive and expensive. You know, I've got quite a bit now. I've accumulated some through, you know, some wheeling and dealing and stuff, but I initially made my own terrain, some hills and stuff. I'll try and have some pictures up here, yeah, up there, of stuff I've made over the years. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I enjoy that because it's larger, it's less detail orientated. The paint inside is often really easy. You know, you get, like, especially for your rocks, you know, some black, grey, some easy dry painting, bit of a wash, throw a bit of flock on there, you're kind of golden. But I also enjoy kit bashing, like even with like small models. I enjoy making like dynamic poses and stuff. I'm again not super good at it, but I enjoy that. It's the painting aspect that I really don't look forward to. I enjoy when I do it often, but I don't look forward to it. So find that thing, if there is something that you do enjoy. Maybe stick to that. Like, you haven't got to have a painted army, though I do recommend trying. You know, maybe if you've got a buddy that really enjoys painting but needs some terrain, maybe you could, you know, come up with a kind of exchange system there. You'll go out and you'll spend a few weeks building that you know, your friend some terrain, some hills and some ruins and some craters and stuff. If they'll paint your army for you, that, you know, that could be fairly reasonable. Like, you know, if you've got, you know, good relationship, like, and that's something you both agree on, and then you both get something out of it, and then you've got a, you know, you could have a cool looking table that you can both play each other on, and you both got painted armies and terrain and whatever. There's always options out there. Not always going to be available to everybody, but, you know, it's something to consider. And finally, you know, with regards to hobbying, just be proud of anything you do. Literally putting together a single marine or a single orc or a knight or whatever, that's hobby work. That's time you are putting in, and energy and money and everything else. That's resources from you that you're putting into something. You're creating something. Sure, you might follow the assembly guide, you know, word for word, and create the model exactly like 1,000 other people have created it, but it's still yours. Okay, it's still labor that you have used, and time of your own time that you've used to make something that you're going to get enjoyment from. And you need to be proud of that. Like, it's important. The things we make and create with our hands, and, you know, think about, and ideas or anything we create is important, and it's good. Is, you know, created art is generally inherently good because it has these positive emotions and feelings and memories attached to it, and I think that's important. So be proud of what you do create, right? Don't worry if all you've got is some generic Space Marine intercessors, not even painted. If there's something that you can have an enjoyable game with, great, that you've taken a step. But I do honestly recommend, just, you know, even if you prime them and spray them in you know, yellow spray paint or green spray paint, just so from a distance, it trust me, that immersion is increased, and it makes a heck of a difference. It really does. And, you know, from there you might think, okay, I've got them all in a single colour, I could do a little bit of trim work, you know, or paint some metallics. Fucking metallics. But yeah, I do think so. It is okay. It's okay to not be a top tier painter. It's okay to not get that same, you know, enjoyment that a lot of other people do. It's fine. You know, be okay with that. Don't compare yourself to the best in the business, right? Don't compare yourself to your friends who do really good jobs. We're here to enjoy this. This is a hobby. This is fun. This is something to improve our lives, right? We hobby, we game, we have these pastimes because they're things that make us happy. And if it's something that's not making you happy, then you need to stop doing it. So yeah, so, you know, that's the first thing I want to talk about is the hobby. So let's talk about the game, playing the game. This is different because there's so many different ways to play the game, right? Whether you're playing competitively or narrative campaigns over several months, or you're playing TTS games, or you know, just friendly games, pickup games whenever you can, or whatever. We all get something from a different style of game. I really like pretty much any type of playing. I love fluffy games. I love competitive games. I love just a kind of regular, let's play a mission with a kind of like, not top tier army, just the best, you know, I've thrown together 2,000 points. I love that as well. But often it can get very frustrating, especially for newer players, I think, because there's a high learning curve to 40k, right? It's steep. Even when you get the basics down, once that the strength versus toughness thing clicks, right? That's often when I'm kind of helping someone learn, getting that simple calculation of, you know, if they're even, it's on a 4 up. If one's slightly above, it's on a 3 up. If it's double, it's on a 2 up. That's one of those weird little things that it doesn't make intuitive sense until it clicks, and then it's like, oh, okay. But even beyond that, once you start to get familiar with your stratagems and your secondary missions and the primary missions and kind of some tactics, there's still a steep learning curve. You could take someone who's played, you know, 50 games of 9th edition, who knows their rules, and they step onto the table against, you know, someone who's only played a dozen games of 9th edition, and they could whip their ass like the less experienced player, because there's a natural element to it, right? Some people are just maybe more tactically minded, or have a much deeper understanding and can absorb their rules and just be able to make a decision, like their head like does the math for them. It's like, okay, I know this squad of Marines will mathematically absolutely annihilate that squad of Guard, so that's, you know, some people think like that. And that doesn't even just apply to competitive games, because a game is inherently a win-loss dynamic, right? There's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser, even in your narrative games. There is a bit of a grayer, more soft victory there. But ultimately it's meant to be fun. Even as the loser, you should enjoy a game. And if you're not enjoying the game as a loser, there's several things that could be wrong. But I'm hoping that the type, if you don't enjoy losing in this particular way I'm going to be getting towards, we can maybe try and resolve that a little bit. Because if you're a bad loser, there's bigger problems. You need to get past that, because, you know, I don't like losing. No one likes losing. Losing's not fun. But the process of playing the game is what we're trying to enjoy here, right? Playing the game, making a balanced competition or battle, whatever it is, however you want to describe it. It needs to be, the experience needs to be enjoyable for everyone playing. And you want to make sure you are contributing to enhancing that enjoyment. So if you're having some bad rolls, don't be like, oh man, I should be winning, but I can't roll anything but 1s and 2s. That's taken away any achievement of your opponent, and in turn is going to make them enjoy the game less. It's happened. People have said it to me, and yes, in cases they have been having bad luck, but I'm like, I'm still trying here. I was happy with my decision to, you know, make this flanking maneuver and deep strike this unit. I thought I was, you know, my advantage was because of decisions I had made based on, you know, my intellect or whatever, right? But then from the opponent to say, oh, it's just bad dice. What am I, just, you know, fried shit, you know? So don't do that. Except the luck does balance out. It may take a lot of games, but the luck balances out. The average dice rolls, it's not rolling 6 dice and you'll get 1 of each. We're talking rolling thousands of dice, and those numbers will balance. Absolutely guarantee it, within a, you know, percentage range, of course. But yeah, don't detract from your fun or your opponent's fun by blaming bad luck or throwing a tantrum or anything. That's just number one, because the game is meant to be fun. Ultimately, this isn't a real life battle, right? You're not in a war. We are simulating it and, you know, reenacting it in some cases, I guess, with certain, you know, narrative missions, but this is a fun experience. This is literally a game. Yeah, there's a win-loss dynamic, but ultimately it's about having a good time, having a positive experience that, you know, puts a smile on your face. So to that end, on the flip side, it's also stress relief, much like the hobby is for a lot of people, much like painting and stuff like that is for a lot of people. For me, gaming, playing a game on the table is my stress relief, right? It's how you enjoy, how you let go of some stuff. It's your me time for me, right? So don't let it become a stressor. Don't let it become something that causes you stress and makes you worry and makes you concerned about, oh man, I just lost my 10th game in a row, and why do I even bother playing? Don't approach it like that. Don't take negatives from it. Learn something and take it as a learning or a teaching experience. Talk to your opponent afterwards, like, how did you think of that tactic? Like, did I let you do that, or discuss things. Your opponent, if you lose a game, you need to talk to your opponent and ask what their thought processes were, because you'll learn something. And if you can understand your opponent, next time they may not be able to pull that same trick against you. And, you may still lose, but maybe the margin will be smaller. Always try and learn something, even in defeat. In fact, it's easier to learn in defeat. You're not going to be a consistent winner until you've been a consistent loser, because you have to fail to grow. You will learn more from your failures, from your losses. That applies to pretty much anything that at least isn't a zero sum, right? I used to lift weights a lot, and this idea of learning from your failure, of being able to find your limit of what you can achieve, and knowing how far you can go. Once you find that limit, once you find your personal best, you don't instantly try and do more. You don't, with a 500-pound squat, if you know you can't do it, you don't try 550. What you do is you step back and you choose an easier target, 450 or something, and you work towards that, and you try and do that for multiple reps, right? And then you work back up, and then when you get close to that 500, it's a little bit easier. So, you in your warm up, your sort of 485 final warm up, 470 warm up, you do 505 and you hit it. So you've gotten further than you were before, not by immediately trying to go ham, but by stepping back and scaling back and doing easier work, lighter work, more reps of it, more sets of it, but by building that volume, building that experience. And it's the same way with the tabletop. You're going to learn more by losing and failing and doing easier work, building up the repository of knowledge, right? And experience and shenanigans on the table and learning your books and stuff. But why it's okay to carry on to losing games, to go 0-5 at a tournament, or always lose against Drukari, or whatever your particular bane is. Your win-loss doesn't define you. Outside of those 3.5 hours at the table, that score doesn't matter unless you are legit basing your business, your income off of your 40k competency, which I know there's a fair few people that do, and they ain't watching this video. They know all this stuff. But if that's something, if you're thinking about that for the future, trying to get good enough to win best in faction for the year, or winning a major, super major, if that's something you're considering, you're going to have to lose a lot of games, because you're going to have to try a lot of things out against a lot of very good opponents. But for most of us, 99% of 40k players, and the majority of people who are watching this, those 2.5-3 hours on the table, that's where winning and losing matters for the sake of this conversation. Outside of that, it means nothing. You'll still go home, spend time with your family. You'll still go out and have a drink with your friends, hopefully, COVID allowing. But and live life. You'll still go to work the next day, or school, or whatever it is. Life's going to carry on. Don't hang on that bad loss. Don't hang on the fact that you couldn't row anything above a 2 for 2.5 hours. It doesn't matter. It's a game. You need to suck every bit of enjoyment and fun out of it for the hours that you do play. Have it as a fond memory. Maybe learn some stuff from it, from failures there, or mistakes you made. discuss with your opponent how you could have done better, how you could have used your assets to defeat their assets. That's it. It's just a game. And again, this is sort of harping back onto the competitive side of it. If you are a competitive player, and I can be very much, if my opponent wants to play competitive, we'll go all out. I don't cheese. Oh, sorry, I absolutely cheese. I don't cheat or pull raw shenanigans. We'll talk things through. Even I've done rolls of 4-up in tournaments to make decisions, or in RTTs at least. That may be different at like a top table, absolutely, but enjoy the game. And even by trying to win, you can talk to your opponent and say, look, maybe I'm obviously going to do this. Are you sure you intended to move your squad there? Because I can all-spec scan or whatever your particular shenanigans. There's no harm in that. If I'm going to win a game of 40k, I want to beat the best version of my opponent I beat. Right? I want them at their top level. I want them focused, crystal clear decision making. I want them knowing every rule they can know, because if I do beat them, that's the best victory. And that's kind of in theme with like why I enjoy the World Eaters. I mean, yeah, they'll slaughter anyone, but there's also that kind of undercurrent of like the martial honor, right? I don't want to defeat someone who's only played 2 games and like just crush them into the dirt. There's no victory in that. I don't learn anything from that. But if my opponent has got my back against the wall and I can pull out some tricks and win that game, or just pull some points back and have a close loss, I get that feeling of accomplishment and I did my best. That's what I want from the game. Even if I'm crushed 90-20 or something like that, if I know I did my best and gave my opponent some really tough choices, I can feel good about that. Feel good in your losses by giving everything you can and knowing that your opponent gave everything they can. And if you did lose, your opponent had to try hard, right? They had to put it all in there. They didn't just just whatever, auto win. You don't want that. Feels bad for everyone. And if you are, in your local gaming scene, if you're like either a newer player or you just kind of like the friendly games, right? You're not bringing a meta list. You've got a cool army that you enjoyed building and painting or whatever, and you just like playing with it because of the rule are cool, which is 100% how we should be playing the game most of the time. But if you're finding that most of your opponents are kicking your ass, and not through being cheesy or cheating you or anything like that, they just maybe they have more meta armies, which is completely cool. People who want to play like the hot army right now, I'm here for that. I mean, but if that is, and you keep losing, and you're at that point where the loss is so bad you've stopped learning from them, which can happen. If that happens, talk to some of them. Like there may be some jerks, but there'll be some cool people. Most players are going to be cool people. I hope you have access to mostly cool people, if not completely everyone cool, right? Talk to someone and say, look, I can't compete with you. I can't compete against your Harlequin list. Or whatever that they're running, right? I can't win this game. The numbers are just so stacked. I'm running this really cool, beautiful looking, fluffy Tau list right now, right? Or Tyranids or Chaos Space Marines. But your list, as amazing as it is, I cannot hope to get a win, right? It's so difficult. You have to be on your worst day and me on my best day, and even then I'm scratching for a draw. Say, have you got an easier list? Or could we play a narrative game? Or could we play something a bit balanced? Or maybe swap armies or whatever. Find another way to change the flow of things, to shake it up. A decent opponent or a decent person, I would absolutely do that. If somehow in 6 months' time World Eaters are like the old Iron Hands or something, and I'm playing an army that honestly didn't have a chance, I don't want to keep crushing someone. It's no fun for them. It's no fun for me. I'm not learning anything. I would enjoy the opportunity to flip armies. I've got a Inquisition force I could bring, which is certainly not in 9th edition going to be anything special because of CP detachments and all that stuff. I could bring an easier list, right? I could totally tune down my list. I would be absolutely willing. Or I would swap armies and let that person have a go with the top tier army, and I'll try and fight it, and I'll look for weaknesses. I can learn by fighting against my own army to improve myself as a player and give them a chance at getting the victory, right? So there's things you can do. But in the absolute worst circumstance where everyone's a prick and they just keep crushing you and they're not open to this kind of negotiation of being fucking reasonable, find new players, find new opponents, go a town across, go to the next town over, or play on TTS. And there's plenty of cool people that will play on TTS and play fluffy games with you, or less competitive, or will even guide you and coach you. There's options for this. So it's okay to not be great at the game. It's okay to not be the best in your local meta or to win tournaments. It's absolutely fine for this to not be your strength. But whatever level you want to play at, whatever type of game you want to play, you have to enjoy it. If you are not enjoying what you are playing, then there's something else going on, and you need to figure that out. Because what's the point? Now, sure, if you're 100% just in this to hobby and paint, you don't touch the game, then this section isn't for you. But if you do play and you want to play and you want to compete or play these epic, 20 game narrative campaigns or whatever your thing is, you have to be enjoying it, and you need to find out how to enjoy it if you're currently not. And if you're enjoying it, you're winning, even if you're losing. Enjoy the games, learn from the games, and embrace the result no matter what. Okay, so the last thing, or the kind of final part here, I want to touch on, and this one's a bit weird, but it fits in, because to me, 40k Warhammer, the hobby, is always in 3 parts. It is the hobby, it's the creative aspect, the painting, the building, that stuff, right? It's the game. The second thing is the game, playing it, again, whether competitively or fluffy. That's like, you've got your creative aspect, and then you've got your critical thinking aspect, your competitive nature, whatever, however you want to describe it. It's playing that game and trying to achieve a goal, and grind your opponent into the dust and cutting off their head and claiming their skull and bleaching it and putting it on your shelf. But then there's the lore. And this is something that you're thinking, how can you suck at the lore? Like, the lore is something external, right? It's created for us to absorb and enjoy. But there are some things I thought about this when I was scripting my notes here. Okay, so we have to think, just by the law of averages, I know most people watching this are going to be English speaking, not necessarily as your first language, because I've chatted to a few people in the Discord and stuff who English isn't their first language, but their English is considerably better than mine. But there are many people for whom English isn't the first language, and just because someone can speak and listen to English doesn't mean they can necessarily read English. They're separate skills, they're often related, and I know most other countries in the world, certainly where English is taught from an early age, these things will all go hand in hand, right? Reading, writing, listening, speaking. But even for people who aren't watching this, for whom English, they don't even speak any English or understand, comprehend English, right? A lot of the codexes and Black Library novels and stuff may not even be printed, or not many of them printed in a language they can understand and comprehend. They may get some parts translated, there may be in fact, I know there are several groups that do fan translations of books because they're not printed in particular languages. So, you may in your travels play against someone like that. You go on vacation, maybe they come here, or you go to a big tournament, and you may get chatting, again, if you both speak the same language. And And the lore may actually be a mystery to someone who has got a beautifully painted army and who plays the game exceptionally well. They may only have the core rules in their particular language. So that is a bit of a gateway for some people. But developing on from that, obviously there's a lot of more gateways. There's certain, you could have people with disabilities, something like short-sightedness or poor sight or even blindness or deafness, dyslexia, and all kinds of, learning difficulties and things like that, ADHD. There's so many things which are a gateway to enjoying what probably most people watching this take as the norm. I can go online and order any Black Library book, any codex I want, and have it delivered to my door in a couple of days, most likely, from Amazon or from Games Workshop or wherever I order from. I don't think twice about that when I do it. But there's many people who like the idea of reading a book is a significant challenge. Like it could be a literal struggle for some people, and they don't get that. It's hard. They have to put so much more effort into absorbing this fluff that most of us probably absolutely love, right? Yes, there's going to be people that only hobby, know nothing about the lore, right? There's going to be people that only game competitive. I would imagine very few, but there's people that game and don't care for the lore. But I think the thing that binds almost every 40k fan together is the lore, because it is something really cool. It's very problematic, and there's a lot of issues with it. And even before we get into what's canon and retcons and all that stuff, which to me, the lore is whatever I want it to be, quite frankly. But before we get onto anything like that, there are people who just may not be interested in it. But that's okay. Like it's all right. But dealing with, or how we communicate with people, if you're in like a Facebook group or a Discord and someone says something about, I wasn't aware of the Emperor was on the golden throne or something, that to us might seem incredibly elementary, very basic. Some people might not be interested in it, but other people might literally have a hard time being able to read and absorb this information. So that, don't, I know this is kind of counterpoint to embracing being bad at the lore, but don't make other people feel bad. Don't make other people feel bad for not knowing stuff. There's so much stuff out there. Even, 40k theories and Oculus Imperia and Templin and all these great lore resources. They don't know everything. I read or listen to a lot of their stuff and follow them on Twitter and stuff like that. The amount of research they have to put in for each video or each lore discussion is ridiculous, because they've covered the big ones already, so they're really having to drill down into some obscure stuff more recently. But there are also people who just aren't, as I mentioned, aren't interested in the lore, and that's okay as well. If you're not interested in the lore, that's cool, absolutely fine. I'm not interested in, but I never read DC comics. I had a couple of Batman and Superman comics and stuff. I was a Marvel kid. DC just never sucked me in. It never appealed to me. I don't know what it is. I'm just not interested in it for the most part. Like I said, I've watched a few of the movies. They're pretty cool. And I kind of grew out of Marvel comics sort of in my early teens and went into like the Dark Horse comics and stuff. And 2000 AD and things like that. But some people aren't interested in it. Now, that's totally cool. It's not a bad thing at all. Some people are going to be like superhuman and be amazing players, amazing painters, and be able to, tell you anything about any faction's lore, right? There's going to be people like that. But there's some of us who, are good at one thing or enjoy one thing. Maybe some that enjoy one or two things. Like, For me, the game is my first love, and I absolutely adore the lore. Like, I've read, certainly not everything, but I've read a lot. Like I've talked about before, I've read the Horus Heresy through several times. I'm on my second rereading of the Siege of Terror right now. I've read pretty much everything Dan Abnett, Aaron Dembski-Bowden, Graham McNeil, a couple other authors have put out. I've read it at least once. I think I've read the Night Lords trilogy like 5 times at this point. Gaunt's Ghosts I've read several times, but I'm like that with a lot of things. Like the entire Sharp series, for anyone who's familiar with that, I've read several times. Lord of the Rings several times. Like, I've read every day or every evening since I was about 11 years old, I think. But normally rereading stuff. But it's okay if someone's not into that, into the 40k lore or whatever. That's okay. It's not integral to get enjoyment out of this hobby. If your enjoyment is painting or playing or competing, you don't need the lore. It's a great thing, but it doesn't appeal to everyone. It just doesn't. It's not for everyone. Like, you know, I've tried over time to talk to my wife about stuff. Now, she's nerdy. She's into some nerdy, or she's into some nerdy stuff. She would never classify herself as nerdy, though she is. It just doesn't appeal to her. I've tried, and we've reached the point where I know it's just weird if I carry on talking about stuff. But you know, there's some things that like nerdy things, like we both really enjoy, or we both read in the same sort of series and stuff like that. And my brother as well. I have got him to read a few books, but a couple of years ago he sent me a message on WhatsApp. He's like, "Hey, I need a book to read." I'm like, I start typing, then he says, "Not 40k." I'm like, son of a gun. But like, we always kind of recommend each other books and stuff, and he's given me some really cool books that I wouldn't have thought about to read. But anyway, sorry, digress. It's okay to not enjoy the lore. Don't feel bad if you don't. There's gateways to it. There are some alternatives that, you know, alternate ways of enjoying it, like through audio books or comics and things like that, which, you know, aren't necessarily thick tomes of you know, finely printed words, but it might just not be for you. So yeah, 40k, it's, you know, what, over 30 years old now. Yeah, it's got a lot of history. It's had a lot of people write for it, retcon things, change the lore, advance the lore, evolve everything, create parts, eliminate parts. It's problematic. There's certainly aspects of it which, you know, it wouldn't be written today, but it's established and it's part of it. And, you know, maybe we can kind of, I don't know, I don't want to excuse things because bad things need to be called out, but that's a different conversation. But it is, there's issues there, but it's expansive and it is constantly changing. You know, we've got the Yellow King thing going on, or sort of building up now. You know, we had the return of several Primarchs, like literally in both directly in the lore as active players. You know, Guilliman and Magnus and Mortarion, certainly in like the post-Gathering Storm arc and Dark Imperium and stuff, but also on the tabletop. It's always changing. It's got so much going for it. Just the vast scope, the kind of like the blending of like horror and crime and your police procedurals and obviously fantasy and sci-fi, just all these things combined. And these are things, you know, certainly people, I would say, you know, like obviously the first people who were into 40k, let's say they were 20 at the time, are in their 60s now. You know, obviously some older than that as well. But kind of like the end of the boomers and the sort of Gen X, right? Everyone from there younger, so your Gen X, your Zennials, your Millennials, Zoomers, whatever you are. We've all grown up absorbing the sort of like mid-70s and on fantasy and sci-fi, Whether it's, you were there for when Star Wars was released, or you remember, you were finally old enough to stay up and watch Game of Thrones, or, you, like me, you grew up with Doctor Who being like, oh my God, I'm allowed to stay up and watch Doctor Who and hide behind the couch, or whatever it is. We grow up absorbing these things just because that's the nature of media, certainly for the last 30, 40 years in the West. And 40k is very much like a kind of amalgamation of everything cool that I remember growing up with, and 40k was in the backdrop of my childhood as well. But that's me, and that's probably most of you. That's not everyone. I've got friends who just aren't into nerdy stuff at all. They like their sports, or just like going out drinking, or they like their going to the gym or whatever. Just not into this stuff. And that's a lot of people, and we should never feel bad. Right now, I say that there are people like that, but they also, they'll play 40k, or one friend or someone I know really loves painting. Couldn't give a shit about this backdrop behind me and what's going on between Khan and Azrael or anything. Doesn't matter to them at all. They enjoy painting. But yeah, so if that's you, if it doesn't matter, I've obviously rambled about pretty much nothing for the last 10 minutes here, but don't feel bad about it. It's okay to suck at the game. It's okay to suck at painting and the hobby. It's okay to suck at the lore. These things are not negative descriptions of you as a person, as someone in this hobby. Be cool with it. Be cool with what you enjoy, and whatever you can get from this, take it, right? In the nicest way possible, though. Whatever you can get that makes you happy and fulfilled and enjoyment and improves your self-esteem and your self-worth and your ambition and all these positive aspects, this should improve that. And that's whether you're sharing photos of your art, of your paintings on Instagram, or whether you're typing up battle reports from this amazing victory you achieved at a tournament the past weekend, or you just want to sit and chat about the lore with someone in a voice channel on Discord for hours because you're convinced that Magnus did nothing wrong. Good luck to you. Just make sure whatever you are using this hobby for, you are enjoying it, and it's improving you and helping you as a person. If you are getting that positive feedback in yourself, for yourself, by yourself, you're doing it right, and that's what we're here for. So yeah, okay, that was today's Chill Game Learn. You know me, I'll ramble on about pretty much nothing for a long ass time, and I've achieved it today. I don't know what my next one's going to be about. If you've got any ideas about kind of what you'd like to hear me just bullshit about for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, however long this has been going on, let me know in the comments. Always looking for ideas and suggestions, whatever the community wants to discuss. These are obviously focused on a bit more personal side of the hobby. Scrolling back, I've talked about gateways and issues with how we treat women in the hobby, mental health. So it's a bit more serious stuff. Doesn't have to be, but I'll absolutely talk about things that are like that and give my perspective. But can be about anything. If you've got something you'd like to hear me ramble on about, let me know. I'll definitely consider it. So okay, gonna cut this off here. I want to appreciate you sticking around listening. Hopefully this was just on in the background while you did some painting or some hobby work or driving to work or something like that. But as ever, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill main burn.